All right. Fancy animation. Sorry, we had to like pause there for a second because I got a little bit too much. But welcome everyone to the very first Pharmacy Informatics Academy live stream. We're gonna have many of these in the very near future. Gonna have spotlight amazing guests such as the guest we have today, Dr. Dalton Fabian, who's actually a pharmacist turned data scientist. And so, part of the series is we're going to be covering a lot of what kind of that journey what are the things that sort of went through those types of journeys for pharmacists who are in very non-traditional roles, but also in health tech. And so welcome everyone. Thanks for joining. If you're kind of listening in after the recording, please let us know if you have any other thoughts or comments. You can always hit us up at the Pharmacy Academy, Pharmacy Informatics Academy.com. Let me get it right. But yeah, welcome. And if you have any, also just also folks who are joining us in the live stream, if you have any like comments or any questions, please feel free to hit us up in the chat. Some of you might be on LinkedIn and some of you might be on YouTube, but yeah, just let us know if you have any questions for Dr. Fabian, Dalton, and me. So yeah, welcome, Dalton. How's everything going?
Life's good. Yeah, been busy with professional involvement, buying a house. So it's been
we were actually just catching up, right? Right before this, we were catching up on like a bit of life update. And it's funny because we were just talking about like how you've been on the Pharmacy IT and Me podcast a few times, actually a couple of times. And so if anyone is interested, definitely give that a listen. You got some great gems within that. But really, I wanted to sort of take the audience all the way back to your background, kind of where you came. You was 2018 grad, right? At Drake University in Iowa. Take you all the way back. What was it, like 5 years ago? That's like 5 years ago, right?
4.5, 5 years.
4.5. Okay, I can't count. But yeah, so like it's you kind of past that sort of new practitioner stage now, right? You've been a student pharmacist. You've kind of gone through the 3 to 4 to 5 years of practice in a different field as well. And so kind of take us all the way back. Maybe you could give us a bit more of color of your student background and kind of where you kind of got started, and then maybe just also just give us a kind of what your current role is. Maybe give us a bit of detail about your current role and where you are.
Yeah, so maybe I'll do that first real quick, and then we can go to the student origin story. So I'm a data scientist at a company called Unity Point Health. So we're a health system that spans a few different states, primarily in Iowa, but also Illinois and Wisconsin. And so my job really is to implement data science and artificial intelligence across our whole system. So we have, 9 different regions in our organization, and every single region is using at least one of our tools. So we have a tool that predicts hospital readmissions, 30-day readmissions, what percent chance a patient is likely to readmit, and then even what day of those 30 days they're going to readmit. Is it, day 5, day 20, to give nurses better options in scheduling follow-ups, or we might predict whether a patient is going to no-show to an appointment or have an ED visit in the future, have an inpatient visit in the future. We basically try to predict an adverse health outcome that a patient might have. And then we hand off that information to our clinicians so that they can do something with the data.
Well, and very, very important, timely right now as health systems are looking to do cost reduction, cost management, control. Everything's about cost, to be honest, right? At health system level, for administrators and for leaders out there. But also, it's also to improve patient outcomes, right? For us, like as pharmacists, right? So what you're doing is building these kind of amazing models, data models, and sort of algorithms to kind of produce some of those outcomes. And so it's a really great kind of takeaway. I wonder if this was something you had thought about when you were actually a P4 or P3 as a student.
Yeah, so that's actually where I started thinking about being a data scientist. It was literally on my P4 rotations. So I have been interested in pharmacy and programming computer science since high school. The public high school that I went to, I knew at the time like when I was in high school that I wanted to be a pharmacist. That was kind of what I was interested in. But in high school, my high school had computer science classes, like 4 or 5 of them, which was an awesome experience. So learned a little bit of programming there, kind of the web development, HTML, CSS, took AP computer science. I think there was like a C++ class in there maybe.
Oh boy,
And
don't mention
so,
C++.
I took
Fun
a
times.
class in
Yeah.
college too, and it was it's an interesting programming language. So, but
Right.
at that time, I really figured that like the programming and data or pharmacy would exist in some separate capacity. I didn't really know
Mhm.
that the two of those could merge together eventually. But yeah, fast forward to, I would say maybe my P2 year, I started to get interested in informatics. I first heard the term pharmacy informatics or healthcare informatics. I think I
Yeah.
was literally reading like some sort of article on about like hot new careers in healthcare or something like that. And
Right.
it was talking about a master's in healthcare informatics. So that's when I started, okay, maybe this will be, what I'm interested in doing, kind of pursue the residency route in informatics. And then where it became pretty clear that data science was what I wanted to go into, it was during my P4 year, during my rotations. I was at actually a hospital that is in my current organization, Unity Point Lutheran. And I told my preceptors that I was interested in informatics at the time. And they were like, hey, we have a student from the previous year, and her husband is an application analyst at Unity Point. Like, we should like get the two of you together so that you can learn more about, what an application analyst does in their day-to-day role. And so I went and shadowed him. He was not a pharmacist, his wife was, but he actually, while I was there, also mentioned, oh, we have this other team across the street in another building that does analytics. Maybe you should talk to them. So I went to talk to them, got a little bit of a spiel about how, what was going on in analytics at Unity Point Health. And while I was there, they introduced me to the data scientist at Unity Point Health. And so I did a little shadow with him, talked to him about the work that he did, the tools that he made. And actually the one that he showed me was that readmissions tool that now I help maintain, which is pretty cool. But after that, I really saw how my knowledge in healthcare and pharmacy and programming were really going to be that data science is kind of going to be that career for me. It's a quite a bit of technical knowledge that you have to know to be a data scientist, or write a lot of SQL, Python, or R. It's more of the coding aspect of health IT. And so at that point, I kind of figured, yeah, this is like the perfect combination of the two of them. And so I started to pursue health data science as a career option, which eventually led to me about a year and a half later, keeping in touch with that data scientist. But then about a year and a half later, I did an internship at Unity Point Health, a 10-week data science internship, and got hired on after that. And the past 3.5 years have been history. So that's kind of how I got
That's
into
amazing.
current role.
That really is amazing. And like you're saying this while you're a student in 2016, which is I think it sounds pretty fairly early in the stage of like, folks even thinking in that realm of getting into these careers. Like informatics was fairly, I still think it's fairly new for students around that time, but also just youth kind of taking that step, to connect with data scientists and other teams. That's phenomenal. Was that part of your thought process? Was like, let me find a mentor, or let me find someone who's out, in the field that I can kind of get more help from?
Yeah, I wanted to get more information about it because I think even though I kind of heard of a master's degree in informatics, I didn't really know what an
Mhm.
informaticist did. And that's kind of why I pursued that when I first got connected to that application analyst, why I pursued it, because I like conceptually kind of got what they did, but I wanted to, talk to someone who actually did the job and figure out what they worked on every day, what sort
Yeah.
of, applications they worked on. That was a big part of it.
So I like the fact that you said that, because it's like, maybe that's a good recommendation for students who are kind of looking for other avenues, before they graduate. Maybe that's something that they could either reach out to outside of their school, or maybe they have a process in their sort of school that allows for that sort of outreach. And so what
And
would you recommend for students who are thinking about it?
yeah, I would definitely say it's like seek those people out. That's why I personally do like go on Tony's podcast, like Pharmacy IT and Me, and like
Right.
I haven't in a while, but the data science pharmacist Medium blog that I was doing and should really get to doing a little bit more. Um, I like sharing that information because I don't think many people, especially pharmacy students, know about the career opportunities in data science. So I think how like a student right now they can definitely reach out to me and find me on LinkedIn and get their questions answered. But usually what I'll tell people is there are more and more data science teams at organizations like at health systems, pharma companies, all of that sort of thing. So if you're interested in a health system in your area, so like say I was not a data scientist right now, but I'm in the Des Moines, Iowa area, I would just go to LinkedIn and type in like data scientist Unity Point Health. And that would be one of the health systems that is my area that I work for. And I'm going to be one of the first people that pops up. And a few of my teammates are also going to be people that pop up. So I would recommend like getting in touch with those people, sending a connection request, and hi, my name is blah blah blah, I'm interested in your job, can I ask you a few questions about it. Making some of those connections directly with those data scientists.
That's a good point. And by the way, we're getting a flood of questions. So, really want to get into the meat of, what kind of tactically what kind of tools and skills that you need to build as part of this process. So maybe we can kind of jump into that a little bit. So,
Sure, yeah.
As a student, it's a different story. You have what I would consider like if you outreach to someone, they're probably more than willing to help you go through that journey. But when you're a new practitioner or when you're in practice, maybe it's a little bit different. And so, what are the kind of next steps for, say, someone who's a new practitioner or who's a mid-level, a pharmacist out there that really wants to kind of get involved? Maybe they want to get started. Where would they get started? It looks like there's some questions around. Do you need to learn programming languages? Do you need courses? Like, what's kind of your overall take from that, Dalton?
Yeah. So I would definitely recommend still do the whole LinkedIn connecting thing just to get your foot in the door. But yeah, you will need to definitely know some of those technical skills. So I would say and you can find there's plenty of like courses out there. I personally like a platform called Data Camp that has a lot of these courses, but the main ones are going to be, especially if you're working for like a health system, SQL. I use maybe probably like 85% of the time that I spend coding is writing SQL, which it's essentially a language to get data from databases. And so, in the electronic health record, every input, every button click is, tracked on the back end in relational databases, and SQL is going to be what you use to get that out when someone puts in a lab value, someone adds a medication to the list. So that's the big one, honestly. But then it diverges into two different programming languages. So the SQL is kind of the data gathering part. The then machine learning part where you're doing all these predictions, that's either split into Python or R. And so it depends on the organization that you're going to join. So right now, and historically, my team has used more of the programming language R for our machine learning work because the analytics vendor that we use supports that programming language and not Python. But we are actually, in the process of switching to doing more of our stuff in Python because our electronic health record vendor has a kind of cloud computing platform that you can do machine learning in, but it requires Python models. So you like have to train your machine learning algorithms with Python. So it really is institution dependent.
Yeah.
But you can cross back and forth between the two if you know one, it's easier to learn the other.
Right. And that's a great point too. I think also just the fact that, maybe catering it to the health system you're in, finding opportunities where you are kind of upskilling yourself with some of these platforms, but also maybe you could kind of reach out to some of your informatics team or some of your data team and work on projects. As a clinician, you have a lot of problems to solve, right? And so like maybe there's some way where you can kind of collaborate internally within health systems. But I really like the fact that you pinpointed like these specific languages and perhaps specific tools for a pharmacist out there. We have another question here from Richard, I think. Are there any CEs related to informatics or data science? And you just gave some presentations, right? Recently with ASHPs and KPHA. So
I did an ASHP webinar in February. I think it was just called Data Science and Healthcare. So that's out there. obviously informatics content. Basically, you and the team at Pharmacy Informatics Academy have a lot of that sort of stuff covered. But yeah, so if you're interested, I did a CE in data science. There's plenty of other like videos on YouTube and stuff like that that you can learn more about data science. Also,
Yeah.
there's plenty of
Yeah,
that content
and
out
by
there.
the way, I think more is coming, right? Because we have folks like yourself. I want
Yeah,
to say also Whitley Yee and Christy Cheng, who's started the AI collective for
yeah,
pharmacists.
definitely.
There's a whole host of creators out there, folks who actually got the expertise and now sharing it back to the community. So it's not just one organization; it's really distributed across the whole community. So really, I think there's a lot of resources out there. I personally would love to see more Cs from Dalton, so I can get my sort of C requirements in.
Hmm.
uh, but I think I think it's just a testament to like hey, we're learning as a community, and we have to like kind of pay it forward some way. And so moving to sort of to more of a career development roadmap. There's sort of, you mentioned these technical skills, and I really wanted to like hone down on the difference between what you are currently, a data scientist, versus what your former roles were data analytics orientated, and maybe kind of give us a bit more nuance or what those two roles are, how distinct they are. So just for someone who's really new to this,
Yeah.
what questions should they be asking really, and what's interesting about the two kind of domains?
Yeah, so there are definitely a lot of it does overlap between like a data scientist and a data analyst. A lot of the skills and kind of you're going to both be writing a lot of SQL. I would say so. What the main difference that I see between like data analysts and data scientists is that machine learning component, that predicting the future component. So you're mostly only going to get that, at least currently, in a data scientist role. That kind of is the domain of a data scientist, is machine learning. Whereas data analyst tends to be more reporting focused, like what happened in the past. More of a focus on that, like how many
Right.
patients got a flu shot this year, or what patients are missing care gaps or something like that.
Yeah.
Whereas data science, we do look in the past to get like when this person was discharged, what was their last A1C or last sodium. But that data gathering is to do that prediction of something that's going to happen in the future. And there's kind of that process involves more statistics and math to train a machine learning model, evaluate that model, see if it's
Right.
predicting things well. There's a little bit more like math and statistics that's involved in that. Not that you need to be like a math genius, because I'm not. So I bring other skills to my team, but there's a little bit more kind of that math and stats part to a
Well,
data
well, that's a good
scientist role.
point. We did have stats in school. We actually had lit search and stats and all these other
Yeah.
kind of tools. And I was just kind of thinking, as a pharmacist, or going through even pharmacy school, there's a lot of transferable skills within
Oh
that,
yeah,
right?
100%.
So
Yeah.
would you say
So
you've kind of used a bit of that?
yeah. So my first maybe month on my team during my internship, we did a literature review. So we
Mm,
were trying to help our care management program figure out what patients they should enroll in care management. And essentially, the idea is that care managers like touch base with their patients more often than a PCP can. And so we figured out that we wanted to predict the risk of a patient having an emergency room visit or an inpatient visit. And so we went to the literature to see how other people had done that before. What parameters about patients they use, did they use mostly medication data, emergency room encounters in the past, that sort of thing. So we did literature review. So I felt very at home there
right.
through all the lit review classes that we had. And I would say like the other main skill that I think is overlooked is how we're trained to communicate as pharmacists with other healthcare professionals. So most of my work, goes to a healthcare
Mm,
professional for them to do something with it. And you have to convince healthcare professionals to use your tools. Like that's part of you can build a tool, but they have to use it. So I found personally that I'm
right.
able to communicate pretty effectively with our clinicians, and I almost have a better rapport with them, because most of these care managers know that I'm a pharmacist, and they're clinical leaders, they're directors of care
Right.
management. they know that I'm a pharmacist, so it has that extra level of kind of trust that it comes from me because they know I have
Right.
that background.
Yeah, I mean, really just the credibility, right? Because
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
talking the same language they are. They're you're trained the same way they are
yeah,
in most cases, and so I think that speaks a lot. And just kind of for the folks who are watching, who are interested in health tech in general, at being a pharmacist or a clinician, really, in a company that doesn't have many clinicians or any healthcare professionals on board, it's really enlightening. You are valued. There's a lot of trust, of course, that you have to build, with that relationship, right? But with that also comes you have to have those leadership skills, those soft skills to kind of really communicate effectively what your point is from your very contextualized background, to make them understand, like, this is the solution or this is the way forward, right? And so yeah, I think this is a great kind of snapshot, Dalton, that you've kind of given us. You've kind of mentioned in Tony's podcast, actually, you mentioned that you're looking more forward towards data engineering. And so we're talking about a data analyst. We talked about what a data scientist is. And then, what is the next kind of phase in the industry, and what do you kind of see the industry kind of develop into with this type of role?
yeah. Yeah, I'm currently so I think a data engineer and kind of what I'm going towards, I'm kind of actually going towards like a combination of all these different things. Data analysts, data
Right.
scientists, data engineers can become one. Uh, just mash them all together. But what I see, so when I think about the like data issues that we have as an organization, I think about some of the if you've ever been inside of the reporting database for the electronic health record that we have, there's a lot of there's a lot of there's a lot of tables. We'll just say it that way. And to get information, you
Right.
have to like connect a lot of these different tables together, and it's not always obvious. So, like, let's take example. If I want to find a patient's last A1C, there is a table that has who the lab was done for and what time it happened at. There's a table for what the lab result was, and there's a code associated that with that. Like code 123 had a value of 9%. And then there's a third table that has, code 123 is an A1C. And so you have to join, none of these tables are very useful on their own. Like if you want to find out, what was this specific patient's last A1C, none of those by itself answer your question. So you have to join those three tables together. And so I see, like, especially being a pharmacist, I think another skill that I have is the ability to interpret lab descriptions and diagnoses and, medication groupings. And so creating kind of a layer over that data that when somebody wants to grab an A1C or a sodium, they just, write a query that says, select from table, give me all of the A1Cs only. And they don't have to, do the interpretation of, oh, lab 123 is an A1C, 456 is a sodium. Kind of creating, it's called, the general idea of that is called a semantic layer, where you kind of, and it kind of fits within the realm of data engineering. It allows people to use data quicker instead of rewriting all of this code over and over again. When you do a new project, you got to write the whole query again, the whole SQL query again. It gives users the ability, or data users the ability to just get in there and use data quicker instead of having to worry about spending all of that time
Yeah.
trying to write
Yeah.
some code that they've written before that should just be repeatable. So
Hmm.
that's where I see like my own career going, having more interest in doing that, because I see how when we write a query right now to find ED visits, and we change it, I have to go in like 10 different places and change it instead of one location. The semantic layer idea thing.
Well, I guess that could be job security in some sense, but
Yeah, yeah,
well, and just for the folks who are listening, and when we speak about tables, we're talking about relational database structures and these type of things.
think of them
Although
as like
I'm sure,
giant Excel table, like Excel
yeah,
spreadsheets, and each one has different pieces of information in it.
exactly. Yeah, that's a great analogy. So I feel like you're really just not only you're looking towards engineering data, but you're really looking towards engineering your career roadmap, in a sense. Because I'm seeing sort of an evolution of where you're going. So I think maybe this is the important call out is, you can start from something very basic, like maybe Excel or what have you. And we have, by the way, we have a great series on Excel by Dr. Alex Evans on our blog site. Please check it out. He's got a great course that's available too. But yeah, we have a really, we can really go really basic, right? And start somewhere. And then sort of have, build these tools as part of your journey. And you don't really, as you said, like you're building a nation of like skills. You don't really necessarily have to be very specific and be very I guess pinpoint one specific language or one specific skill. It's really amalgamation of that. But what is the real outcome behind it is kind of what I'm thinking. And I've come across, I worked with data scientists in my career. I worked with data analysts in my career as well, and with the product team. One of the things we want to do is solve for business problems at the end of the day, right? And so when you're building these toolkits, always remember it's really the problem for whoever the stakeholder is, right? Like your leadership, your CFO, whoever it is. This is what you want to do to solve for, the audience that you're kind of, or your customer, I guess, that you're seeking to do. So I think it goes back to like, pharmacists are great problem solvers. I've said this many times, and I think we all agree, right? This is like a skill that we really have. A lot of critical thinking, as well as like, sort of looking at problems as algorithms, perhaps, decision support sort of trees, but really kind of being very meticulous about it and looking at it as a way to, really solve a problem for healthcare and for your patient. Ultimately, hopefully that's kind of the end goal. So, I want to just ask Dalton, like, where would you say folks can go to today? Like, is it Data Camp? Is it like, is it getting on Excel? Like, where is it that someone can kind of really just take action today and like start their journey?
Yeah. So the reason, like I mentioned, Data Camp earlier, and why I like it so much for sort of someone who's a beginner, even like I still use it also. So it even has classes up to, even if you're already a data scientist. But what I usually find, just in general, what's hard is like kind of piecing together your own learning plan. When you don't know, what like if you were interested in data science, but you don't know much about it, like it's very hard to piece together what skills do I need to learn. Like you might come across Python and R, but I mentioned that SQL is so important to being a data scientist. So what Data Camp does is they have like career paths. So you can say, I want to be, you could take some SQL classes. They have a couple SQL, career tracks, but then they also have a data scientist in R career track or data scientist in Python career track. And it lays out, starts from not knowing any programming really, and then goes all the way to, implementing machine learning models, like some of the more advanced machine learning models. So it gives you that path. And I think like Coursera and companies like that have some of those similar path, functionalities in their software. But that's kind of why I particularly like Data Camp. Yeah. It's very easy to get to and, start learning to code right away. And I think especially what you said earlier about critical thinking skills, I think programming can be pretty, like people get scared of it or like, think it's going to be this like super hard thing. But I actually do think a lot of the critical thinking skills that we develop as pharmacists and, medication therapy management, all that stuff, and therapeutics, I think it applies really well to learning to program. Like you do a lot of critical thinking when you're programming too. So I'd encourage everybody, like,
and it's fun, right? It's once you get into it, it's really fun. I mean, just try it. So like one of the things like I've kind of looked at and reviews Maven Analytics, which is a similar platform to Data Camp. But I really appreciate the fact that it's sort of like curated for someone who really just needs a bit of structure or wants to figure out what that structure is. And by the way, my like alarm goes off while I'm chatting. But going back to like it really gives you structure. So I think maybe as a next step, what we could do is we could start maybe kind of do a review, a little short reviews on some of these platforms that are out there. I certainly think that may be a valuable ad, but I'd love to hear from you guys, from the audience, like what kind of tools have you started to use, or what's kind of being on the forefront of your minds. And have you looked at any of these tools, DataCamp, Maven Alex, any of these other sort of tools as part of your, you know, beginning of your journey? So just curious what your thoughts are. Let us know. But other than that, you know, Dalton, can you tell me one fun thing that you're looking forward to in 2023 as you kind of like, as we kind of wrap up 2022? You've done a few conferences, webinars, and talks, but yeah, what are you kind of looking forward to from a professional level?
Yeah. So probably what I'm most interested in, and like I've been starting to get into more recently, is doing data science on the cloud. So implementing some cloud computing. So we, you know, currently right now we run all of our, you know, data pipelines and machine learning processes through an analytics vendor, and they kind of manage a lot of that for us. But there are like a couple of platforms out there that I think will work really well for us, or better for our machine learning work. So there's companies like Microsoft has a cloud platform called Azure, and we're working through implementing that right now for our team. We're going to be the guinea pigs
Right.
for our organization to get some data work or analytics work up in the cloud. And then there's platforms like Databricks, and so we're planning to implement and use Databricks for some of our machine learning work. So I'm kind of going into that kind of cloud data engineer type position. That's kind of what I'm targeting with this move to the cloud. So that's probably, that's the thing I'm most looking forward to, because it's becoming the whole cloud ecosystem is becoming a more important, you know, skill set, you know, in the future. It's really going to be, you know, most data science teams will probably run their stuff in the cloud. So that's going to be an important skill to know for me going forward.
Yeah. Well, I mean, not only you're like future proofing your career, but you're actually like staying true with like the lifelong learner concept, right? You're learning every single
learning.
day. Yeah, a lot of learning. Yeah. So, you know, I mean, it's a testament to like, you know, like if that's something that will never stop in your career, whether it's, you know, you're moving into data analytics or data science role, or it's just any other role in health tech, non-technical as well as technical, there's a ton of learning to be done, right?
Yeah.
You still have to stay up to date with industry standards and, you know, kind of build other toolkits in your arsenal. So we're going to be covering a lot of these other topics very soon with other guests, you know, and we'd love to kind of hear your feedback. But, you know, just kind of as a end to this, really, Dalton, I really appreciate your time, taking your time to sort of chat with us. You know, I think it says a lot about just how much of a mentor you are in the community. Yeah, because really just this is what we're about, right? This is how we kind of pay it forward, is we have to share the knowledge we gain with the community. And so our next generation of pharmacists can really do better and, you know, do more with what they have. So
I've had a lot of great mentors that have, you know, even, you know, our clinical professors when I was in pharmacy school, or, you know, my boss now, he's like a data scientist. I get a lot of data science mentoring from him. But like, I definitely wouldn't be where I am today without, you know, some of those professors making connections for me, or preceptors making connections for me. I literally probably wouldn't have my job if, you know, those preceptors hadn't connected me to other people and been more than willing to do that. So I definitely feel like it's super important to kind of pay that forward.
Well, thank you again. And, you know, again, if you want to get connected with Dalton, please follow us on LinkedIn. Follow Dalton on LinkedIn. You'll find him on Dalton Fabian. And then also just, you know, if you feel like this has been valuable, please, you know, share with your friends, your colleagues, your, you know, peers. We'd love to have more join us and kind of hear more stories from the front lines, you know, from what's happening in health tech, and also how you build a fulfilling career in this space. So yeah, thanks, Dalton. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me, Beju.